Howdy folks, it's Diabetes. Welcome to episode 3.5 of Retsutalk. How does that work? Well, after we recorded episode 3 last week, Ironicus and I felt like we had some more ground to cover, so we got together the next day and talked for another hour and 40 minutes, something like that. Yikes. So that's the explanation for that. So any current events that we talk about, I think there was one that we covered. Not so current now, 1 week later, so just keep that in mind for whenever we talk about that. In case you guys want a table of contents, here's what we covered if you want to skip around or if there are some topics that interest you more than others. We start by going into a little bit of sidekicky, LP, self-history stuff. Then Ironicus gives me an intense history lesson on D&D, so strap in for that. Then we talk a little bit about Kickstarter and Penny Arcade stuff. That's kind of where the current event situation kicks in. Then after that, we talk about the Metal Gear Solid series briefly. And then we touch on Doctor Who at the end. So, hey, there you go. I'm the worst audiobook ever. So, big thanks to Greg P., who did our intro theme for today. And thanks to @ResistTheUrge on Twitter, who provided me with an outro theme that we could use. So thank you, fellas. Appreciate that. So without further ado, welcome to 3.5 of Retsutalk with more Ironicus and Sidekick Chat. Alright, welcome back.
Welcome back to Retsutalk episode 3.5.
After a wildly successful and wildly popular episode 3, Ironicus is back.
Hell yeah. This is
that's kind of presumptuous of me, because the last one was released very recently, so...
Like 5 hours ago, somewhere in that range?
Yeah, so I kind of feel like we need to record 2 versions of this intro, like one where it was really, really well received, and one where everyone just hated you.
I'm sorry you didn't like it. We're recording 3.5 to make it up to you all.
Yeah, welcome to... Wait, welcome to... episode 3.5.
This is the repentance episode.
This is a Hail Mary of podcasting. I mean, the last episode 3 was a disaster. I mean, what the fuck was that, dude?
I don't know.
Your fiance was talking in the background? No one liked that. You saw the comments.
I did, nobody actually likes Kirby. We're the only people alive. And now I know, and I'll have to live with that shame for the rest of my life.
Yeah, lesson learned. The listeners of this podcast are not children.
But
okay,
anyway.
I think those are both good. We had some unfinished business. The last hour just wasn't sufficient.
I thought it was strange, and I know you agreed with this because we actually spoke about it. I thought it was strange that we had an episode called Sidekick Chat, and we did not chat about what it is to be an LP sidekick.
Yeah, we alluded to it very briefly, but then went into zero detail whatsoever.
There were a few things where we did that, and so that's other things on the agenda. But let's start with that. What do you think of being an LP sidekick? What do you think of being like Slow Beef and Diabetes?
Well, I had a different entry, I guess, than you did, because I started kind of doing my own thing for a little while.
That's right. Yeah.
Doing some solo stuff, but I don't think I function very well alone. Mm-hmm. It's just a very different thing when you're trying to record something and be entertaining, but you have no one to bounce off of, so you only have you and your own ideas.
Right.
So when I was doing those original videos, I was trying to think, video LPs are fun and all, but what's a way to kind of... This is something I talked about in the last podcast, was, turning genres on their head a little bit. How can I make things a little bit different, a little bit unique? Maybe just to be, just to kind of, thread the creative needles a little bit.
I can totally get along with that. I mean, that's something we try to do. We have our basic LP structure, him playing the game and being all knowledgeable and me just asking questions and shooting the shit, whatever. But we try to tailor that to something that fits the game specifically. So that usually works out, and I plan on talking a little bit more later on some examples of that, like Killer 7, one of our earliest LPs and still one of my favorites. I think we did a pretty good job on that. But I've always liked your solo stuff. Like, if you ever go back and finish Mega Man X, that abandoned LP, I know you don't like it much, but I disagree so strongly. I loved that thread while it still existed.
It got to a point where I just felt like I was...
Fan. Oh my god.
I don't know. Yeah, that's the... So for those of you who don't know, I think the videos are dead to the seas of time now, but I did this Mega Man X LP in like 2008, early 2008, I want to say. And it was another solo thing, but it was...
early 09, because I've been in the forum for a little while, a few months.
Yeah. So it was a little different than the other games, because like Battletoads, a lot of people had played, but not a lot of people had gotten very far. So there was still some stuff to show off, as far as skilled runs go, and that was part of the purpose of that game, was to play that game well, while at the same time throwing some weird shit in the mix as well, which, some kind of worked, some not so much, just kind of looking back on it. Little Nemo was kind of the same way. I don't think a lot of people had played that game. These are all on lparchive.org, by the way, if you're interested. And then Mega Man X was, that's just a game that I really, really loved playing, and had just played the crap out of growing up. And, with the advent of emulation, you can just go back and re-experience those games very easily.
It's like almost as big as Super Mario World as far as things everybody played from that generation. It's like Sonic 2, Mario World, and Mega Man X.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was still in that kind of solo phase, trying to play it and make it interesting, and I don't even, I did these weird intros for every single stage that...
Oh, those were the best.
I don't even appreciate that.
I love the one in Spanish, you did this bizarre Spanish telenovela previously on thing.
See, that was the thing, I was doing these weird things, and there was absolutely no reason, it had no context to the game whatsoever, and it was just completely pointless and just me being goofy. And after a while, I kind of looked at it. I think I stopped after I beat all the robots, but I was like, I feel like I'm trying too hard to make this entertaining. And this is a big, kind of faux pas with a lot of Let's Plays, is that, a lot of people just are not naturally interested in playing the game, so they just try to inject more and more of their personality to a hyperbolic level to make it interesting, and then that just makes it worse.
The YouTube LPer that's just making up, contextless catchphrases and screaming them all the time.
Yeah, and so I felt like I was falling into that trap a little bit, so that's why I, eventually abandoned that game. I was like, I'm just not feeling this anymore. So that was about the time that me kind of playing games on my own stopped, and then, I'd already done Captain Novlin with Slow Beef and Scarboy, and then Slow Beef had started, I don't remember what our first collab LP was, but then we eventually started teaming up a bit more. And Retsupurae actually started in early 2008, so kind of around that time we just started getting to our groove, and it's a lot easier for me to have somebody to bounce stuff off of in a conversational sort of way, rather than me just trying to, on my own, make things interesting.
And you're not just strictly a sidekick, more like, I am. But, because as far as Retsupurae goes, you handle the channel and all, the social media, and it's not your name, but it's still, it's in your voice, if you know what to look for.
That kind of makes sense,
tell,
Yeah, most of the tweets you see, any, Facebook things, those are 90% of the time from me. And so I've done that. Slow Beef kind of handles some other stuff, and, works out well. But, Slow Beef, I would say, he has a lot more games experience. I'm sure you would say the same with Chip, obviously. They have the games knowledge going into it. So with a lot of the games like Dead to Rights, Slow Beef had played that game himself. He knew it in and out. Like the Flash games we do, Retsufrashov, he's played them, so I come in blind.
And that's a really good setup. A lot of duos do the same thing. Face Guy and Wogturt are both cool guys, friends of mine, and they do the same thing. They did Pikmin. They've done 2 of the Paper Marios. So, yeah, you guys at home, check them out. LP Archive.
lparchive.org. Check it out. All their stuff's there. So, I go into a lot of the videos with this innate sense of ignorance, I would say. because I just don't know a lot
tabula
about the
rasa
games.
of Let's Play.
The tabula. I'm a clean slate coming into every video, and yeah, I just don't know a lot about the game industry or what goes into making games. Slowbeef has a lot of hands-on experience with that, so he can speak a lot to that. But
I think that's great.
Yeah, that dynamic can work pretty well. But at the same time, you can feel disposable, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. Like
Because, I mean, I try to contribute where I can, but literally anybody could make comments over something.
and that happens. Like, I like taking a break once in a while. I like doing my own thing. So, when Chip did Metal Gear Solid 1, I'm like, I've had it with MGS for a while. I'm sitting this one out. So we did it with Voidburger, and that was a great LP. Like, I cracked up all the time, especially once they got, like, about halfway through the game. Like, the second half, just gold stuff. I loved it. And it's coming up again. He's going to do Peace Walker with Snart Cookie, who he's done some streams with. He's done both of them guested on Voidburger's Silent Hill Shattered Memories LP, which is also great. LParchive.org. Hey, there you go. So I have been disposed, but you know what? I'm cool with it. Like, I get messages from people who think like anytime I sit an LP out, like it's breaking up the band. Like,
I was gonna say,
how the hell do you do co-op commentary of Bastion? Like, you're already doing co-op commentary with the announcer. Like, 3 is a crowd in that case. Like, I am totally cool with not doing Bastion. It's not an issue.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not just people asking, "Hey, bro, where are you?" But there was a lot of kind of harsh comments too, weren't there? Like, I saw some of the Chip Cheese and Voidburger LP, and a lot of people, I think it was maybe in the thread or in the comments on the videos, I forget where exactly, but kind of a lot of vitriol going into because you weren't there and that the whole dynamic, change is bad and all this
stuff.
stuff.
I was clearly there. I was posting in the thread saying, hey, this is great. Yeah. I'm enjoying this video, and I'm enjoying not having to make this video. It gives me an extra couple hours a week.
Yeah, and it doesn't even need your endorsement in the first place is the thing. Like, why does that... I don't know.
It was even worse when I did a couple of videos with Slowbeef. I did a couple of Retsufrashes. I did a couple regular RPs. Like, people just hated me for not being you. It was insane.
People don't like change in their silly internet.
And I think they turned out all right. We did some horror game. We did that men's room monologue that was just insipid. And motherfucking
the sexy hiking game? Yeah.
But yeah, one thing I find as a sidekick, a much less involved sidekick who's never really done a solo thing. That's not true. I did a screenshot LP of an M. Dickey game called The U Testament, and that was just so... M. Dickey, if you're not familiar, is probably the worst game developer in all of history. He is
the top-billed Flash actor.
We got the top-billed Flash actor to voice him, anyhow, because
that's right, yeah.
It fits so well. He's just...
Oh, that was fantastic.
It was. If you're familiar with RP but not with the U Testament LP, what happened was I did it in screenshot form. We did a couple blind run videos, Chip and I posted them in one of our threads. I think it was MGS2 we were working on at the time. We posted those as regular content. So then I decided, I'm just going to actually play through this game. I'm going to do a screenshot LP so I can actually get some deep commentary, control the pacing, because this is just batshit coding that will not play along with anything I plan. And I changed all the textures to just total nonsense. I replaced all the face textures with Doctor Who actors and cartoon characters. And the luckiest thing is that the randomly selected Jesus face was Goku. And that...
Oh, yeah.
It perfectly set the tone. So, and this is really my only solo LP experience, and I almost finished the game. I triggered the Crucifixion too early, and then couldn't finish the game because it's that badly programmed, so I never went back to it. It's technically abandoned, but it's still in the archive.
Yeah, that'll happen, the Crucifixion thing.
Yeah. But the last thing we did was Chip just recorded a video on his beefy recording rig because even though it's a horribly low-res, ugly-ass game, it's so badly made that it's a giant resource hog. That's another reason I did screenshot instead of video, because it always came out choppy on my machine. So he recorded a video of all the magic Jesus powers you get. Yeah, you get magic Jesus powers. That's totally in the Bible.
Like the Kamehameha wave, right? Yeah.
Here's how bad this is at even being about the Bible. In the first scene, MDicky cites a Bible verse that does not exist. Like, you look it up in the Bible, it's like Matthew 26:47 or something, and it stops at 45. That sort of thing. But, yeah, he recorded this video, and I got in contact with the guy that voices, what's his name, from, like, the Arise trilogy?
He voices a lot of stuff. It was also in the Trapped trilogy.
Yeah,
I
that's
think.
where the Trapped trilogy. That guy,
Yeah.
Edwin Tiong / Omadon / what was the character's name? Of the
I don't even remember.
whatever, like that. You know the guy, the smuggest voice on Newgrounds.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's how you recognize him. He's the one who talks like that.
Yeah. We got him to read MDicky's own blog posts. And
Yeah, it turns out he's actually a pretty well-humored guy.
he's great. I love this guy.
Yeah.
He's been in some shitty Flash stuff, but as a guy, he's a really cool person. So he read this stuff and put it over the video. This just bass. Yeah, it's just terrible, terrible ass of a game. And I think it's one of the best videos we ever did, even though it doesn't have either of us in it. Maybe because it doesn't have either of us in it. So that's my solo LP experience. Which
Your
is why
greatest achievement is a sidekick.
Yeah. It's the only time I really came out of the Sidekick shell. I haven't really done anything on my own, so I'm like completely my image in LP is completely at the whim of Chip, basically. Because, he does the recording, he does the editing. Editing is huge, because, like, when I have input on, like, something, I'd really like to do this for a video, I want to do, like, this, I have this weird idea, can you make a video of this? Like,
Yeah, and it's not just editing, but it's just the thoroughness that he does in all of the games you guys play. Like, hey, there's this really obscure Easter egg that's really, really hard to get.
Mm-hmm. But, like, what I was
100% is just everything.
When I have an idea, hey, can we do a video of this? By we, I mean him. So it's completely out of my hands. Like, it's his interpretation of what I said, filtered through his head, with his own ideas, and in a video he made. So it's still partly mine, but it's not really mine anymore.
But you still have the input, though.
I still have the input. I'm not saying this to be bitter. I'm just saying, like, this is my experience this is what it means to be an LP sidekick to me. Like, and now going back to what I said I'd talk about earlier, the one time I really felt like I had personal reign was in Killer 7. We did a lot of bonus stuff. I wrote up fake profiles of all of the members of the Smith Syndicate, the actual Killer 7. And these profiles are all archived on our own site, chipandironicus.com. And I passed them off as real stuff from, like, interviews with Suda51 and like, actual bonus content. And Chip drew, like, amazing fan art of each of the Smiths to post alongside them. And,
yeah, not only is he thorough with video games, but he's also a graphic designer by trade, right?
I actually he's a graphic designer, a web designer. He's redesigning our website at the moment, again. I saw a mock-up of it, and it looks great. I mean, he's having some trouble whether he should add a plus sign in Chip and Ironicus or just leave it Chip Ironicus as it is now, because it's very square, and he doesn't want an ampersand, because an ampersand is too round, and it wouldn't be square anymore. These are the things web designers think about.
That's far out of our trade, my friend.
Yeah. And he's like, if I put in a plus, isn't that like a weird slash fiction live journal thing, putting in a plus? Like, I hope not.
What's your perspective on the whole website thing? Because Slowbeef and I have talked a little bit about having a website every now and then, but then, like, just with the effort involved, and, neither of us are graphic designers, obviously,
right.
So it got to the point where we were like, we have YouTube, we have Twitter, we have, Facebook. We didn't feel like we really needed one, but, it's just the creativity that Chip has and his ability to kind of take concepts to, to execution. I've seen your website; it looks really great.
I think all three of our websites have been pretty darn good, and each one's better than the last. I mean, like it's the same website, but each redesign and the
iteration of it, yeah.
The new one's going to be even better. It's pink. There's big circles. It's like the opposite of every other gaming website that's just black and red and columns. We have pink and orange and circles, so fuck you.
Do you guys have any future goals for the website? Is it more of a place to? I guess they're self-hosting for the videos there, but is there anything aside from that, like a blog of sorts, or just anything else you want to add to it, or is it more
now
just
that you
for
mention
the
it,
LPs?
I'd really be interested in writing a blog. I should bring up that idea. I think, as the people that follow in your footsteps like puppy dogs, we've obviously got to start our own podcast now. We could host it.
Obviously, that's clear.
But,
You're just going to take these 2 episodes that we did and have those be your episode 1 and 2 and try to overdub my voice as Chip's voice.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah. Clearly.
But yeah, I think that would be cool. But it's mostly just a place to centralize our stuff, in addition to people who find us through the forum and through the archive. That's what it is now. But yeah, some blogging, some. I'd like the idea to add a contact email for the website, and I'd be happy to handle that. I know I've brought this up. I don't know if this is in the cards right now. But hey, maybe now I'm just going to guilt him into it by mentioning it on a podcast.
Yeah. He listens, doesn't he, Chip?
He retweeted this earlier today, so he's...
Oh.
He might not have listened, but he's at least a supporter and a promoter. He helped crash Mr. Swoon's hosting. Hooray.
Yeah, that was a slight problem that we encountered with episode 3. I made the mistake of putting it out on every communication media that I have access to, all at the same time. See, the first couple of episodes, I was like, well, I'll tweet it out, see if people think this is worth listening to, because I wasn't sure about it the first couple times, and then I was like, what the hell? The Mr. Swoon was like, hey, my website went down for a little bit earlier today. I was like, I'm sorry.
Whoops.
I'm a dick.
So really that's all I've got to say about being an LP sidekick. You have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess the thing I would add just on my own experiences since doing the whole co-op thing, what I try to do is, I was very heavily influenced growing up by the whole, MST3K. I watched the hell out of all those shows.
I've mentioned this before. Like, people always compare all retsupuraes, all retsupraers to MST3K. And I think you're the only guy that does jokes in their format, like their structure of reference. Mm-hmm. You're the only person who, really emulates their voice. So, when people compare us to, I guess, in that we're making fun of stuff. But the things that I say do not sound like things the robots would say.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And especially the solo stuff I've tried to do for retsupurae since it started, I think is entirely influenced by Mystery Science Theater, because, those were all actually, those were things where I tried to watch it beforehand, kind of using their whole format that they did, trying to, watch little by little, where's the joke here, try to think of something funny, write it down, and then say that joke in what seems to be a natural way, what is hopefully a natural way. And I've done that with a few videos. That's the Retsu Watch playlist for those interested.
Yeah.
That's been my creative input, and that's kind of what I've tried to do throughout the whole retsupurae thing, since I don't have a lot to say about games in general, or the industry, or the process. It's more about just taking what's presented to you, and just me trying to see what's funny in this. Yeah, what's something to point out that maybe people might not notice, or that might be worth pointing out and saying something about. That's kind of what I tried to do.
If you define LP Sidekick as the guy that doesn't know the game, like the uninformed person discovering it through the LP, I think that's our job, really.
Yeah.
It's to find the joke, and to find the question. The informative guy can be going off on a tangent of things they're thinking of because they know the game, but sometimes it's your job to just say, hey, what's that over there? What are you pressing to make Snake do a really awkward worm crawl on the ground? What is that used for?
Yeah, and those are some of the comments that, a lot of the good comments, I should say, that we get are people kind of pointing these sorts of things out, and that's why I kind of feel like you and I can be kind of like the surrogate viewer of sorts, the surrogate first-time viewer. trying to point out things on the audience's behalf and kind of...
Those are roles I try to keep in mind, as well as making fun of Boss Gelato and Swallow Taco. And so, all right, another thing people wanted more information about, Dungeons and Dragons. I said a lot of things, but didn't really go into depth on anything. People want to hear about, like, it's an old game. I mentioned that, but I didn't really say what that means. Like, it came out in the 70s. Like, before D&D, there's this game called Chainmail. It's a fantasy tabletop war game. It's like the descendant of, like, your Warhammer, that sort of game.
Right.
And so there's this very bearded man named Gygax who's like, I really want to play a game where I can be like my favorite heroes from fantasy literature. So he's like, he took a look at Chainmail and saw, well, this is about fighting and a medieval setting, so let's work with this as a base. And he basically made house rules to play Chainmail as fantasy characters. Like, okay, I'll take this infantry guy, and I'll write up some new rules and turn him into like a fighter guy, and I'll take this siege artillery, and I'll write up new rules, and now that's a wizard. Like, that's where the D&D wizard came from, is siege artillery.
Really?
So, yeah, there's some balance issues in the history of the game that lasted for
a spear!
For a long, long time. Well, the spear is now called Fireball, so there you go.
We need to nerf the javelin a little bit, or the cannonball.
Yeah.
It's more of a fireball, right?
So that's what they call original D&D, or just OD&D as an acronym, and that sold a lot. Like, it was a brand new sort of game, roughly. Like, you can say he invented role-playing games the same way you say Slow Beef invented Let's Plays. Like, it depends on your definition, and there's some people doing sort of the same thing around the same time, but, like, Gygax gets the credit, and D&D got huge, right?
So was the DM a thing at this point,
yes,
or is that later?
Well, the DM was called referee at the time, because Chainmail had a referee. And so they restructured the game, so instead of, warring armies, you'd have players playing these individual pieces and the referee playing everything else, like their opponents, in a dungeon delve. And the game grew and grew with a bunch of house rules and, like, guys Gygax played with, would think about how, like, the game was supposed to work. So they made basic D&D in a red box after they founded their own company called TSR to publish it.
So at this point, were people sitting in circles smoking weed while they played?
It was the 70s. I bet they were. I hope they were. Hell yes.
Obviously, yeah.
And the red box, basic D&D, then led into subsequent boxes called the expert set and the master set, and, like, the champion set. And that edition is now called BECMI, for, like, the acronym of all those. And that's a really great game. It had, it fixed some of that balance I was talking about by giving fighters just really, like, gonzo but awesome shit. Like, you could get so proficient with a bolo, the rope with balls on the end, you throw at a kangaroo and it falls over. You could get so proficient with that, you can just throw it at a dragon in round one and it's out for the fight. It's, like, completely bound and useless.
You can throw it at a dragon, but mostly it's meant for kangaroos.
Yeah.
Because fuck those guys.
I hate...
The kangaroo cometh!
I hate the Australians and all their animals.
Uh.
Now, at the same time, Gygax was working on his own version pretty much solo, while the basic line was a collaboration between him and a guy named Arneson, who's really great, and part of why basic is so great. But he made advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and they were published at the same time, which clearly caused no market confusion at all.
Wait, D&D and Advanced D&D came out at the same time?
Yeah, basic and advanced ran simultaneously.
Oh, wow.
It was... TSR had a lot of bad management decisions, and I'll be talking about that further down the road. Like, if Slow Beef ever listens to this, hey, if you've got to do a marketing, an MBA project on really badly run companies, just look up TSR. There you go. They're the worst.
So at this point, there is no D&D iPhone app, right?
No. They were trying to develop something for like the 8-pound car phone, but that never came to fruition.
The 8-pound car phone app, right?
Anyhow, there was...
OnStar, I'd like to check for traps and treasures.
Now, basic D&D was a lot more popular at the time because it was featured in the movie E.T. It had like the Reese's Pieces effect. But AD&D is more popular now out of nostalgia. Like there's a whole retro clone, old school Renaissance movement that's basically about people making their own games that are just copy and pasted from AD&D.
So future iterations of D&D are based primarily off of AD&D?
The next couple were. 4th edition, the current game, actually has a lot more in common with Basic from a game design perspective. But Gygax had to leave TSR, and with him they ended the AD&D and the Basic lines. And then, so, without Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, they had to make Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition. I don't know much about the rules of 2nd edition, but I know that it had awesome settings that it's famous for, like Dark Sun, Ravenloft, Spelljammer, Planescape. Have you ever heard of Planescape Torment, like the PC game?
I've heard of it, yes.
And how it's apparently like one of the best electronic RPGs ever made? Like, that's the hype. I've never played it, but it's based on the Planescape setting, which is just a really cool setting. If you ever get a chance to read about it, I'd really recommend it. Planescape is really cool. And so is Spelljammer. It's about magic spaceships. So that's up my alley.
Everyone loves magic spaceships.
These settings were published in really lavish box sets with like great art and really well bound books and just really high quality stuff. Now the thing is, nobody at TSR was doing cost analysis to see what they should be pricing this at and what they could expect to sell and if they could possibly break even.
It's rather important.
They're so bad at business. So basically all these really great things that would be great to buy were horrible for the company, and they sank TSR. Along with some other decisions, like playtesting was against the rules during the 2nd edition era.
Against the rules?
Yeah, the management decided, like, hey, we hired all you nerds to make games, not play them all day. So they banned playtesting.
Stop telling us to tweak the graphics on level 3.
Like, stop telling us to actually make the game playable. So there's a lot of weird rule shift and, like, power creep and strange things happening from one book to the next. So they had to release a 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons revised, which is basically incompatible with the original release, and it's pretty much a new edition that people forget about.
Aiming to set the world record for subtitles.
Yeah.
So are we in the 80s right now?
Yeah, we're actually, yes, we are in the 80s now. This is the 80s.
Okay, so I'll take off my tie-dye shirt.
So that sinks TSR pretty much entirely, and then they get bought by an upstart company, Wizards of the Coast, which is flush with Magic the Gathering money, something we discussed in the 3.0 podcast.
Right.
Now, an interesting thing about Magic is the biggest brand in all of traditional gaming. Like I mentioned Warhammer earlier as a point of reference. And Warhammer is like a tabletop war game, and you take that entire segment of the market, war games and their miniatures and their paint, and all these accessories, all of that combined as a market segment makes less money than Magic the brand, not even counting all card games Wizards produces, just Magic alone. It's the million-pound gorilla of traditional gaming. It's huge. So this was like during the first Magic boom, so they had money to burn. And, like they make a trading card game. They're obviously nerds, so like the company that makes Dungeons & Dragons is up for sale. Hell yes, they snap that up. But, new company, they need to make a new game. This is the 90s now, and they're going to make Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition. They dropped Advanced from the name. This made a lot of nerds very angry, because they will be angry about anything.
just doing that roused. Wow.
Yeah. So this one was all about.
Where's my third edition?
At the same time, gaming had moved on. I don't know if you've heard of Vampire the Masquerade.
I have.
Like, that was a story game from a company called White Wolf, and it was taking, like, role-playing by storm. It was huge. So they're like, okay, all right, second edition with all its crazy settings was pretty story-based. We're going to go back to the dungeon. We're about fighting orcs and killing goblins and taking their stuff. That's what we do. We're Dungeons and Dragons, bitch. And like that was like their whole pitch. And also developing a new engine called the D20 system. Dungeons and Dragons has always been based on rolling a 20-sided die. But now everything was based on the idea that you roll a 20-sided die, add a number that you find on your character sheet, compare it to a target number, and then you either succeed or you fail. And it's a really simple idea, and it's really robust, and they tried to sell it as one system for every game.
So the D20 was in even the first 70s game that came out?
Yep, it was even in chainmail, and the D20 system makes a lot of sense because, you get to calculate your probabilities based on 5% increments, which is really about as small as you can get, because, like, what's 1% probability going to get you? But, a -2 on a D20, that's 10%. That's measurable, that's noticeable, that's going to happen sometimes.
It's insane!
Yeah, it's at least noticeable, a lot more than 2%.
I hope you're all updating the D&D wiki as you're listening to this.
I hope you're all checking my math on your calculators at home. Is 10% bigger than 2%?
Actually, Ironicus, it's not.
On a non-Cartesian plane. But they tried to sell this as a engine for everything, and it's an engine for a lot of things. I mean, it's an engine for anything where you want to fight a thing with your +2 weapon and eventually level up at the end of the night. But like I was talking on the last podcast, gaming is so much bigger than that. There's like weird story games, and there's collaborative stuff, and there's just a bunch of gonzo shit out there, and D20 can't cover that. But they tried to. They even made D20 versions of Vampire and Werewolf and all those White Wolf games.
How does that work?
You rolled a 10, you're sparkly.
I mean, how's...
I don't know. I don't play Vampire. I'm not really into the... My parents don't understand me because I listen to Coheed and Cambria scene,
I'm sorry, Dracula, you rolled a 1. You're not a re-vampire. You're back to a person. I'm sorry, Dracula.
Mate, that explains so much about that Dracula anime.
I think I solved all the plot inconsistencies of Dracula anime.
But now, another problem with 3rd edition is that when they playtested it, at least they playtested it, but they played it as if it was 2nd edition, and didn't test a lot of the things that they changed. So, like, they tested it to make sure it plays like the D&D they were familiar with, and it did, if you wanted to play that way. But there were just huge rules imbalances and crazy loopholes through all of 3rd edition that made it really a pretty bad game in hindsight. I mean, it was a step up in a lot of ways, but those oversights made it a big step backward in a lot of others.
Okay, so we're in the 90s now, right?
We are in the rockin' 90s. Just
Woo!
wear your Zubaz and let's play D&D.
I love Nirvana, let's play D&D!
My bard is based on Pearl Jam. So a few years after...
I have a knight named Alice, and he is in chains.
So 3.0 was probably I think it's the shortest-lived edition of Dungeons & Dragons. They came out pretty quick with 3.5. Actually, no. This is the 3rd edition.
Was this patching before patching was a thing?
3rd edition came out in 2000. 2nd edition was in the 90s. I'm so confused. Yeah, that's why they needed to take back the market from White Wolf, because White Wolf had been growing really steadily and got really huge through the 90s. And so, year 2000, D&D 3rd edition, back to the dungeon, screw your pussy vampires.
Did you say White Wolf?
Yes, that's the name of the company that did Vampire and Werewolf in the World of Darkness line, as they called it.
All right. Remember this transition for later, but my question is, was White Wolf a bad wolf?
Spoilers. That's also a transition. But yeah, they're pretty bad. They went out of business too. They're now a subsidiary of the company that does what's that? EVE Online. Yeah, the space fraud simulator. So now 3.5 comes out, and which is why I think it's appropriate we're talking about it in podcast 3.5. That always made me smile inside thinking about having this conversation.
Okay.
And that fixed some of the problems. Not all of them. Like, the game is still crazy imbalanced. If you want to be effective, if you want to be able to end encounters, you play a wizard. If you want to do it almost as well, you play a cleric and cast all your spells on yourself.
Oh, so after all this time, wizards still had the power of artillery in their belts?
Basically, and fighters were just a guy. Like, you still see it, like I mentioned grognards.txt, the mock thread in the Trad Games forum. Like, you have people justifying the idea that magic means if it's impossible for you to possibly imagine it, then a wizard can't do it. If it's impossible for you personally to do it, then a fighter can't do it. And that's really shitty for a fantasy adventure game. Like, it's...
The only limit is your imagination, and all these other things.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some bloggers who have caught some flack for saying that Dungeons & Dragons caused brain damage in people who are really, really committed to the 3.0 and 3.5 rules. And I wouldn't go that far, but people who, like, cling to them still now, when there are better games on the market, just demonstrably better from a game design perspective, dude,
You should see a neurologist.
just calm down. Play some other game. And now I'm sorry. I
Other
apologize.
games? What?
Your Facebook is going to get lit up with like Edition War stuff. I'm sorry for exposing you to it, but I've got to be true to myself in my opinions. So 2008, I think it was. 2006 or 7, maybe, they announced, hey, we're making a 4th edition. It's going to be awesome. 2008.
But I like the 3rd edition.
2008, it's released. And that's the current game. That's the game I play in my LP/podcast. That's the game. When I talk about D&D, that's the game I'm talking about, because it's current, it's new, it exists. If you go into a bookstore and buy a D&D book, it will be 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Unless it...
But I found a 3rd edition in the used bookstore's garbage bin.
Yeah, and you know, hey, if you're a collector, if you still really like the game, despite its flaws, good on you. I mean, 4th edition's not perfect. It's an improvement. It's a big improvement. Not perfect. But it's really great. The game has developed now into, like, a bunch of people sitting around, like in that community episode, and now it's gone back to sort of the original D&D, where it's based on a tactical grid-based combat engine, and that is really robust. It's really great, and that's the meat of the game, and it's so fun just to kick monsters' asses with like your selection of powers. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, that's what I loved about Hero Quest so much. We were talking about that in the last podcast. Was it's kind of similar. You have rooms that are on a grid. You move your guys.
Right.
You do some attacking. You level up, and you feel good about it. So I didn't know D&D actually functioned on a similar, or the one you're talking about functions on a similar kind of grid system.
Like going back to original D&D, and even I think Basic had the same thing. They measured distances in inches because it was assumed you would be playing with your warfighting minis on a tabletop and measuring distances like that way. But now everything's measured in squares on a grid. Squares are 5 feet by 5 feet.
And you're saying the 3rd edition does not do that?
3rd edition actually does. It has a lot of the same, which is one thing that I think is crazy with like these people that are intellectually dishonest, let's say, about liking 3rd edition. Now, as a disclaimer, I should have said this earlier, it's possible to like a game and recognize that, hey, that's just my play style, that's what I played when I started out, those are the books I have. You're cool by me, just don't be really angry and intellectually dishonest about it.
Ironicus, grids have not changed much in the past several decades.
They're still 90-degree squares. So yeah, 3rd edition did have a lot of the same thing. Like, people say you could play it without miniatures, but when, like, your spell goes 20 feet, you're going to want a visual reference for what 20 feet means.
What is that in inches?
Well, am I 20 feet away, or am I 25 feet away? Let's stop the game while I argue with my DM for 15 minutes about this one fucking spell. You know, and that's why...
I'll get the ruler.
That's why it was really useful to have a grid for 3rd edition, no matter what anyone tells you. So yeah, 4th edition exists. It's getting long in the tooth. It's really bloated right now. That's one of the problems. It has a lot of problems endemic to the D20 system, like skills are one thing I really love about the 13th Age, the game I playtested, mentioned a little bit on the last podcast. Has a much better skill system. It's covered by free-form, make-it-up-yourself backgrounds, instead of a list of 20 things, like acrobatics, athletics, thievery, stealth, perception. No, if
This gave me an idea for the nerdiest cheating tool ever.
Really?
Weighted 20-sided dice.
comes up 20 every time.
Yeah!
People actually get angry at you for rolling the wrong kind of 20-sided die.
What do you mean wrong kind?
Well,
Is this 20-sided or is it
you
20-sided?
probably have some 6-sided dice in your house, right? And if you look at one,
Sure.
you've got the 1 is on the opposite side from the 6, and the 3 is on the opposite side from the 4, and the 2 is on the opposite side from the 5. So, like, the different numbers are all spread out. And on a regular 20-sided die that's used for role-playing games, it's the same way. Like, the big numbers and the small numbers are all jumbled up. They make accessories for Magic the Gathering called a spin-down dice that's 20-sided, numbered 1 to 20, because you start with 20 life playing that game, and you use it as a life counter. But all the big numbers are on one side, and all the small numbers are on the other side, so you can just move it around. You're not looking for, like, okay, I went from 15 to 14, where's the 14 on this? No, it's right next door. So if you roll that, you can sort of trick roll it so that, like, the big number side comes up more often. You can practice that. And, like, why the hell would you cheat in this very silly game about pretending to be an elf? But people do.
So this is a thing that actually
This is a thing that actually happens, which is dumb, and it's a thing that people get bent out of shape about, which is just as dumb.
Well, my warrior works out, so it only goes without saying that you get higher numbers.
It's ridiculous. So, yeah, 4th edition D&D, great combat system, really good support with things like rituals for, like, out-of-combat stuff, and the skill system's pretty good for a D20 game, but 13th Age's free-form backgrounds are so much better. 5th edition has been announced and is currently in open playtest. They're about to, like I said, 4th edition's getting old, it's getting bloated, which means when a game that's based on selling a core set and then supplements gets old and bloated, it gets less profitable, so they got to replace it. 5th edition does not look good. It looks like, I mean, it's in progress. It's apparently in early progress, but it looks like a return to old mistakes, which is a shame because, you know, I want the game to do well, especially because it's the biggest name in role-playing games. Like, when you say, oh yeah, I play tabletop games, people are going to like, what? Like, I play D&D. Like, oh, okay, I've heard of that, you know?
I've heard of that genre.
Like, if people want to get into RPGs, the first thing they're going to look at is D&D, because that's the big name. It's like the Kleenex thing, you know? It's like, if you want to get into computer RPGs, you look at Final Fantasy. It's the big name, even though it may not be... It's certainly not the only thing in town, and for what you're going to like, it may not be the best thing in town for you, but it's the name. So I want D&D to be the best game it can always be, just because it's the gateway.
That's one thing I wanted to ask you, actually, was what do you see as the future of D&D? You know, you have this up-and-coming generation, they're getting exposed to the technology side of things. Is there room for them to get into D&D, or are they going to go towards the Final Fantasy, the visual element of it?
4th edition
where do you see that
had
going?
great online support. It had the best ever, and I really want 5th edition to do it even better. There's a subscription where it's like 10 or 15 bucks a month, and you can share that between your entire gaming group and all like share a single account. That's totally within the rules. So like 5 people, even if it's 15, that's $3 a month. Like that's literally chump change. And it gives you online access to every rule updated to the latest revision all the time. It gives you a character builder with every character building option. It gives you a do-it-yourself monster builder where you can print out like perfectly made stat blocks. It gives you subscriptions to digital magazines. There's a whole lot of content, and that's great. Some of this stuff isn't programmed especially well, but compared to the nothing that came before, it's amazing, and I want that to continue and get better.
But does all of the prep and the reading that's required to get into something like D&D today, do you think that will preclude people from participating in it when it's so much easier to, put in a video game disc and you have the visuals all right there and you just learn the controls real quick and get into it for an RPG?
The thing a console or PC RPG will never ever give you is the social aspect of sitting around with your friends around a table or a Skype chat. MMOs get close. They have something like your guilds and your team chat. They get close, but it's not really that social time of like, I go and hang out with my friends and we have beer and pretzels, or like my gaming group, I get to catch up with Serg's insane farce of a life, And I
need to get him on the podcast sometime.
I get to hang out with like my nice buddy Plaz. I really like Plaz. He's a really cool guy, Plasma Man.
Does game design for a living, doesn't he?
He's studying it, and he has a lot of great ideas. Every idea he has is the sort of game I would love to play. Like we're just like in sync in our ideas on game design, and he's the one that is actually getting the skills to make it happen, and I just talk about shit. So good for him.
That's the sidekick way.
That's the sidekick way. So yeah, that's something that you're never going to get. As much as I love Xenoblade Chronicles, that's the RPG I'm playing right now on my Wii. I love that game. It doesn't deliver the same experience. And also, D&D is entirely in your imagination. There are no invisible walls. There's nothing stopping you from doing anything besides, like the social contract and everybody saying, no, Robbie, that's a shitty idea. It's not.
Right, you're not constricted by programming.
There's no constriction at all. It's exactly what you make it, and that's a magical thing that cannot be replicated. And I think that's something that draws people in. And it's certainly in competition with digital media, but I don't think it's ever going to be snuffed out just for that reason. So that's my thoughts on D&D, essentially.
That's the history of D&D.
Yeah. Oh, and
a comprehensive anthology.
I guess I should say some stuff about my game in particular. I think some people were curious about that. Like I said,
the thread you have ongoing
yes,
right now
yes,
is something
our thread
awful?
game. It's very, very silly. I know I've name dropped some people. If you've watched a Wolf Shirt LP, like the old Ghouls and Ghosts, or many, many of his abandoned projects.
Again, lparchive.org. Check it out.
Ghouls and Ghosts is actually one of my favorite LPs.
That's a very good one.
Great.
Yeah, classic 2007 LP.
But basically, our game is ridiculously stupid. Like, I described Serg's life as a farce. Our game is a farce. Like, long, long ago, many, many levels, Wolfshirt plays a minotaur named Joey Hooves, and he saw... We were in a wizard's tower, as you do. And he saw a city in the distance, and he just ad-libbed, oh yeah, it's Boner City. And we all laughed, because that's a dumb joke. But later, that became a part of our game world. It is now the city-state of Bonerton, ruled by the Boner Baron, and I play Gibniff Boneson, nephew to the Boner Baron, and descendant of the Resplendent Boner. High above Bonerton, there is a tower. We call it the Grand Erection. It's a monument to our prosperity. This is the sort of stuff you can expect from our D&D game.
D&D is rated M, 18 plus only.
It's rated M for boners.
Right.
So and people run like fantasy Vietnam, like high danger campaigns. There's a movement called Fourth Core that is just all about using the 4th edition rules to make life hell on your characters and just make sure they die over and over again like they're, tissues. There's a lot of different ways to play, is what I'm saying.
So play D&D, people.
Play it. It's great.
Get into
like I said, look for the game that's right for you. D&D's a great one, and there are many others.
If you were to give just like an executive summary, like action items to anybody who says, I want to get into D&D, don't know where to start, what do you tell them to do?
Okay, like I said...
In like elevator pitch.
Elevator pitch. Find an actual play podcast. Second, and listen to it. So there's a lot of game terminology. It will accustom you to it. When someone says armor class, you want to know what they're talking about. That's a defense that most attacks hit. Now, you're coming in blind, you don't know that, but it's a very important term, and actual plays are good for that. It also gives you an idea of what the rules allow you to do, what they suggest you to do, and what a game, how to run a game. Penny Arcade Podcast, that's probably by far the most popular one. I like ours. I mean, I can be a proponent of my own.
Sure. You plugged it once, plug it again.
Look for local game stores. If you live in a metropolitan area, you'll have a better chance of finding one. They have play sessions all the time. There's organized play of Dungeons & Dragons. It's called D&D Encounters. That's the program. It's kind of like Friday Night Magic, but I think they do it on Wednesdays or Thursdays. And it's a different game entirely. But it's the same sort of organized, sponsored play from the publishing company. That's a really good resource. Meetup.com is great for finding groups. If you happen to be on the SA forums, Trad Games has a meetup thread. It's called Gaming with Actual People. There's also a meetup thread for digital groups. I think that might have fallen into archives because it didn't get used much. So yeah, find a recording, find people to play with. That's the best way to do it. Find people who have already played, and they will be happy to help. Because people that play trad games are generally friendly people that I mentioned last time. They want to have fun. They want to have other people have fun.
They won't hurt you.
They might smell pretty funny. I mean, that's a
a
stereotype that is unfortunately rooted in truth in some cases.
They might not shower.
So yeah, current events. You want to talk about current events?
All right, what do you got? What's going on in
Penny
the
Arcade
world?
Kickstarter. That is on everybody's lips.
Yeah, Kickstarter in general is a big buzzword
this one
today.
in particular.
Yeah. Dish on, what do you got? What's the story?
Okay, for those of you who haven't heard, Penny Arcade, I'm sure you've heard of that. It's giant, the world's biggest webcomic, I think.
Right.
They do their own conventions, which is crazy, and they're actually successful, which is even crazier. But their website and most of their company is supported by ad revenue. And they're doing a Kickstarter, which is a crowdfunding campaign. They're asking their fans to donate money so that they can take ads off their site for a year. And they want to run a year ad-free for the fans, which is kind of a commendable goal. I think it's a little silly in a world where ad block exists.
Yeah.
But
a lot of people have that luxury already, so
yeah.
Why would you give money to do nothing, essentially?
They're catching a lot of flack for an idea which I will say is dumb, but I don't think it's that dumb. It's just silly dumb, and not like, what the fuck are you guys thinking dumb? That's my take on it.
Yeah, well, that's the one thing that surprised me is that, so their goal for the raising is, I think, $250,000?
Yeah.
And which I thought was, I mean, that to me is just a lot of money,
It's
period.
huge.
And then, you said, well, they make pretty much all of, or most or all of their money based on ad revenue alone,
I'm
and
pretty
that's
sure.
what feeds the
pretty sure
families.
it's just
And
like ad revenue and their merchandise. Someone, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's it. I'm pretty sure like PAX passes just pay for the convention, right? And maybe some administrative costs specifically for the convention. I'm pretty sure it's mostly ads. But yeah, staff of 14 with wives and children.
14 people, really?
That's what they said on the Kickstarter page. Like they're a company of 14. Or no, the announcement on their actual website, their blog post on their website said that.
I mean, were the ads so obtrusive that so many people complained, and so was the impetus for starting this in the first place?
Just
why?
go on their website. They're really simple, unobtrusive ads. I think one thing I want to mention that they're catching flack for is their rewards. Like, for those of you at home not entirely familiar with Kickstarter, you donate money, don't expect anything back, but if you donate to a certain level, Kickstarter requires you, the project creator, to offer rewards to your donors because, it's a group effort, we're all in this together. And,
right.
The more you donate, the better reward you get. So, like I mentioned an RPG Kickstarter called The Last Stand in the last one.
This is the stinger up the butt.
This is the stinger up the butt game. And let me just check this. For $10, you get the game in PDF. For $30, you get the game as a physical book as well as a PDF. That's pretty standard. For like $100, you get a really fancy box set with all sorts of things. Penny Arcade, for $25, you get a digital book. That's cool. For $15, Gable, think about you during sex.
It actually says
it does. It is very silly. It's very flippant. But like,
I mean, isn't the idea of kind of like, I mean, part of the quality control behind Kickstarter is that they have to be, or that they should be actual, tangible rewards that you get for contributing?
Yeah. Also, the point of Kickstarter is to create a tangible project with like a clear end. Like,
right.
I think this is skirting the line between a project and fund my life, which is one of the things that is like verboten on Kickstarter. But I guess that's up to the admins. Like, I don't really care enough. I care enough to talk about it, but it's not like I'm going to report them. Like, they got approved.
Yeah.
Initially, there's an approval process. I don't think this is ever going to come down because, Kickstarter gets a percentage off the top. That's how they keep going. And this is going to make $1 million. This is going to be a huge...
Oh, yeah.
This is going to be huge.
I mean, it's more of a... It seems like something that's thinly veiled as, a quote-unquote Kickstarter, but in actuality, it's more like something that, hey, do you like us, support us monetarily, and help us, even though...
I wonder if they...
I mean, I'm sure a lot of people who donated already use, ad blocker for Firefox or Chrome or whatever, so they're just donating out of their own, love and support for the site, which is fine.
Yeah.
They're more than welcome to do that, but... is that really something that's fit for... Why on Kickstarter? I just don't quite see that.
I don't really know. I think you're right. I wonder if they wouldn't be better served by having a donations page on the site and just running that year-round instead of this big, 40-day push to get it all for the year.
Exactly. It would be just so easy to make, a forum post or, something on their front page just saying, hey, we're trying to maybe not eliminate, but reduce the ads that you guys are exposed to. So
I get the idea of being unbeholden to ads, like unselling out. Like, it's called Penny Arcade Sells Out, but you're taking corporate sponsorship off the site. It's like the opposite of selling out, right?
I would think.
Yeah. I see why that's a commendable goal, but really, it's all very silly to me.
Yeah.
Now, one more thing about the rewards I was going to say, Penny Arcade is huge. Like, if they had a $100 level, Gabe will make a custom digital sketch for you. I don't think he would have time to actually draw the comic for the remainder of the year. They have to have these ridiculous flippant goals because they will get far too many backers to handle otherwise.
Yeah, because like you said, there's only 14 people there, so you take away everyone's time.
It's $150 for a t-shirt. That's just to limit the amount of fucking t-shirts they're going to have to print. It's only been 2 days. They're going to have to send 260 t-shirts.
So how much, when was this posted?
I think it was just 2-3 days ago. So,
and they already have over 100 grand, don't they, out of their 250K
I think,
goal?
On the 8th or 9th. So yeah, that's, I figured it'd be good to talk about because it's really it's on the tip of everyone's tongue, and mine is in knots. So.
Absolutely.
We're keeping on the ball. So yeah, I'm really pro Kickstarter. I think it's a great idea, and I've seen a lot of ones dumber than this. And to be fair,
that's the thing. I'm not very familiar with Kickstarter, so I could very easily be talking out of my ass. But it's just like it's something that's become more, I don't know if mainstream's the right word, but more just, I don't know, popular, well-known, something that a lot more people are adopting. But so, you could make literally any sort of project and set any sort of arbitrary goal for it. You could artificially inflate how much you really need. Like, is there any sort of I don't know if quality control is the right word, but just any sense of controls, period, that help mitigate those sorts of, exploitative possibilities?
Like I said, they do have guidelines, they do have a staff, there is a cursory approval process. It's become more cursory as Kickstarter has grown, but the staff hasn't grown with it as fast. But like you can report things and they'll take a closer look at it and might just take it down if a more intense look shows it violates the guidelines. As far as overinflating your goal goes, if you don't reach the goal, you don't get the cash.
Right.
So that's the big check on that. But as far as Penny Arcade goes, yeah, they're gonna. It's a question of how many multiples of 250,000 they're gonna get. Yeah. You think they're gonna get to 3 million or only 1.5 million?
Well, what's their deadline?
I'm looking at the page now. I'm breaking my no clicking rule because I agree that was really annoying. I apologize. To look at the page, they have 34 days. So.
And it's been up for a few days.
It's been up for a handful of days.
And they're already approaching half of their goal.
They're beyond
if not
half.
Already exceeding. Beyond half.
Would have been 175. So they're $10,000 beyond halfway.
Wow. So, hey, Christmas bonuses, right?
No, Christmas bonuses around the PA offices.
All right.
I think most people, their negative reaction isn't that, why is this on Kickstarter? It's that Penny Arcade has gotten a lot of bad publicity, specifically because Gabe doesn't know how to not run his mouth about stupid shit.
Oh, is that... I don't really follow Penny Arcade much at all, so
I'm sure you'll have people telling you about dick wolves and about all sorts of rape stuff. Okay, here's my opinion.
Does Daniel Tosh run Penny Arcade?
There is a comic a long time ago about this, how even heroes in RPGs are generally sociopathic. Like, there's like this mission in a dungeon in like WoW or something. Like you go and rescue 5 prisoners of this hell dungeon. And the joke is that the player character is talking to prisoner number 6, listing, all the horrible tortures he's going to endure. But hey, sorry, I'm only here for 5. I'm full up. Gonna book it. That's the joke. And one of the tortures he listed was he's going to be raped all night by the dick wolves. Now, some people got upset because, hey, rape is not something you joke about. That's kind of a dick move. Ha ha ha. It's triggering, it's making light of rape, it's rape culture, all that sort of stuff that's been getting a lot of mileage on the internet lately. This is kind of where it started. And
really? Huh.
Now, while I personally think that's blowing it out of proportion, then Penny Arcade responded in the worst ways possible. Like,
oh, really?
Don't make fun of a rape survivor for being a rape survivor. You just don't fucking do that. And it became this huge kerfuffle. Like, I don't know if you heard of the video games versus trope women feminist perspective thing.
No.
Okay. Well, that's a more recent version of the same thing, and it's also Kickstarter based, so I guess it's related. But I think Dick Wolves was even bigger than that because it was the first time this really exploded. And it's just a huge mess where it showed how embarrassing the internet truly is. And Tycho, I don't know their real name, I guess Mike and Jerry, but I don't know which one is which. So the writer guy, after Dick Wolves, learned his lesson and learned to keep his trap shut when there's controversy afoot, because he runs a company, and that is the professional thing to do. But the drawing guy didn't. Like, he still has no internal filter, and he says the dumbest shit.
It's a classic separation between PR and the creative side.
Yeah. Like, if they had a real PR person, I think they would pull Gabe off Twitter. Just yank him.
Right.
So that's Penny Arcade. You want to call it an hour, or you want to keep going on the other things on our agenda?
Why don't we keep going? I don't think length is really an issue. If people want to stop listening, they'll stop listening.
Hey, we can provide timestamps since we're doing this in agenda. If you want to skip all this D&D shit, skip to.
Just don't listen to this, basically.
Something else you got a request for, Metal Gear Solid.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we didn't even talk about that in the pre-prep.
Yeah, but I figure it's more important than the other thing. Metal Gear Solid, we sort of breached it earlier when we were talking about Sidekick things. I'm sort of the Metal Gear Solid guy. I'm the Sidekick Metal Gear Solid guy.
Yeah, so you never played any of the games.
Not true. Before we ever did Let's Plays, Chip and I were friends for a few years before we started recording ourselves talking over video games. And as friends do, we loaned each other games, and he loaned me a copy of Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes. Oh. So I played that all the way through, and I'm bad at video games. I'm pretty bad at stealth video games, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it's a great game. And
yeah.
So I do have that one experience, but most of my experience with MGS is being involved in LPs of every other MGS game.
Yeah, my experience is a little bit different. I played, first entry into it was PS1 for the PlayStation, rather than the GameCube version.
Right. And that has a lot fewer, not only does it have lower res textures, obviously, because of the hardware, it has a lot fewer features. Like Twin Snakes added a lot of the extra things you can do from MGS2 into the MGS1 game, which makes it play really differently.
That's very true, but at the same time, just from the perspective of someone who played it around the time it was released, it brought a whole lot of new things into, gaming period. Primarily around, little hidden things, little Easter eggs. That was the first time where you were like, oh, did you try this? If you do this, then you get this secret conversation here.
Yes.
Or, the whole Psycho Mantis thing. Like, oh, wow,
great.
I know, right? And this was like one of the... I don't know if this is the first time this has happened, period, in games, but, for me as a youngin', that just blew my mind at how fourth wall breaking the whole thing was. And so that was kind of the hook that got me onto playing MGS2, then MGS3, and then even MGS4.
I think each of them have been really game, like genre-defining in the same way, although MGS gets a lot more credit because it did it first.
I'll say that you and Chip's LP of MGS4 kind of helped change my opinion of the game a little bit.
That game gets a lot of flack. It's really...
it's very polarizing. Yeah.
There are people that love it beyond all reasonableness, and there are people who think it's literally Satan in Blu-ray form.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the middle, I guess. So, like, the first two acts of the game, of MGS4, was like, oh, yeah, this is, really fun. This is kind of classic, not classic, but it's kind of, really good, solid Metal Gear type stuff that you would expect.
Isn't Act 3 the one in Fake Prague? That's the worst fucking
that's the
thing.
one where...
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's kind of, but that's where things kind of take a downturn a little bit. Even Act 4...
Act 4 is great. I really liked Act 4.
It's great.
As a nostalgia
It's great
trip.
from the nostalgia. Yeah, exactly. From the nostalgia perspective, it's great. But I feel like at the same time, they could have made it a little less tedious. Just because, as a person playing through the game for the first time, it was just so tedious getting through these. This is the first time you're fighting machines rather than people.
The geckos and the ball things everywhere.
Yeah, the geckos, those ball things that roll around, and it's really confusing as to, when can they spot me, when can they not. So you're like in alert mode a lot of the time. You're just kind of haphazardly blasting your way through things. That can for me, that kind of got in the way a little bit of enjoying the nostalgia part of what they were presenting. Like, the aesthetic of it was great, but kind of the mechanics of it were a little less fun.
Not as good as the first acts.
Yeah. I still appreciated it because they brought it back to
Metal Gear on Metal Gear fight, and that makes up for a lot.
That was a huge redemption, definitely. And then Act 5 comes along, and then again it's kind of like, oh, this is just kind of the closer. It's pretty much all cutscenes.
Act 5 is really good
through like a hallway or two,
and story-wise, but like when you're playing a game, you want to do things with your thumbs, And Act 5 doesn't really let you do that much.
Yeah, of course, that's everyone's big complaint about Metal Gear is, oh, it's all cutscenes, it's all passive entertainment. And, that's true in some parts. Like with MGS1, I don't think that's as
No,
much of a
it's
barrier.
really not.
But with it's really not. And then MGS3, I think MGS3 did the best job out of any game integrating the storytelling element with the gameplay.
I think it's absolutely the best one. I might change my mind after the Peace Walker LP, but as it stands now.
I'm looking forward to the Peace Walker LP. I'm too cheap to want to get that MGS collection that has those. I think it has 2, 3, and Peace Walker. But since I already have and have beaten 2 and 3, I'm like, I don't really want to pick up something just to play Peace Walker. So and that's kind of the thing that this is like a whole different topic altogether. But that's kind of what Let's Plays can be good for sometimes. Is just helping you kind of experience a game from a unique perspective when you don't really want to play the game yourself necessarily, but it helps you still experience it in a certain way.
One more thing, going back to the games as being innovative, like, it's not just that series, it's just a Kojima thing, and that's why I love the guy. Metal Gear Solid 2 had very clear innovation in that unconscious and dead bodies are persistent, they don't just disappear. And that really changes stealth gameplay. It also had just weird, like, why would you think of this innovation with, like, those ice cubes that have an algorithm where they melt at a different speed depending on how they landed based on the physics engine.
Or like you go to, a certain place that you don't normally need to go to and you see Snake crawling across in a cardboard box. That's, not something you would see in a normal playthrough, but you can go out of your way a little bit and see that. There's just so much attention to detail.
Not just attention to detail and Easter eggs, but just bizarre innovation that why would you think to include this in a game, an ice melting algorithm?
Yeah.
But then you think about it like, oh, well, game objects behaving differently depending on their relative proximity, that would be so useful in something with like, soldier AI. Like, with a little thought, it becomes obvious why that was something that got a lot of attention, even though it was only used for ice cubes. And that's why I really like that Kojima seems to get so excited with new hardware. Like, PS3's announced, hell yes, I'm making Metal Gear Solid 4. I am on board. And we're going to have, like, real-time mustache growth, and you can shave Snake. And that, unfortunately, got cut. But Octo Camo, the Octocamo, great mechanic. I love that. And that's something that you can really only do on PS3.
Yeah, that was one of the big problems with MGS3 is that you had to, go into the menu, go out of the menu, change your clothes.
Right.
It kind of breaks up what you're doing, and MGS4 just, makes that more seamless, which is great.
Yeah. Which is one reason I would really, really like it if Kojima said, oh, by the way, I'm working on a Wii U game. Like, I just want him to get his hands on that toy and see what he can pull out of it. Like, he's a mad genius. And sometimes he can make us all a little mad, too.
Yeah, I think he'd be a great person to get on top of that, because as, unique or novel as the Wii U is, I kind of, paid attention to the E3 stuff, but they just didn't really have the games to back up the hardware.
And,
so it's like, what's the point?
DS pre-launch did the same thing, and that's become, like, the most successful console ever or something. And we had the same sort of problem, and it eventually crawled out of it, and, it had huge market penetration. So I'm not really worried about it, but I'm concerned, Like, looking at the tech they have, it makes me want to get a Wii U eventually, but looking at the games they have, like, I'm underlining the eventually in that.
Yeah, like they have another Super Mario Brothers Wii U type game, but, looking at the demo, it's exactly the same as the last Mario Brothers Wii game. So, where's what's going to entice me to play another game I've already played once?
As far as co-op platformers go, Ubisoft's presentation of the new Rayman, way more exciting for Wii U. That's the best thing they had for Wii U in the entire show, was Rayman Legends. I'm going to play the hell out of that eventually, years down the road.
Once other games come out.
Knowing me, by the time I'm 50, I'll be playing that.
Once the Get Ironicus a Wii U Kickstarter is successful, then we'll be good. So, do you have any opinions on Metal Gear Rising?
Metal Gear Rising looks fun as hell, man. Just chop the shit out of everything. Blood everywhere. I love games that you can play differently, and I think not only is this going to be an action game, it's going to be a physics toy, and I think that's
Yeah.
a great combination.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are turned off of it because it's not, the Metal Gear Solid brand,
Yeah,
quote unquote.
well, that's why it doesn't have solid in the title. Like, it's a clear flag.
Or a number,
This is a spin-off. This is its own thing. Like, Metal Gear Ghost Babel didn't either, and people didn't really... Well, maybe they might have. I wasn't on the internet during the Game Boy Color years.
Yeah, or Metal Gear Acid.
Yeah, Metal Gear Acid. Did that have the same sort of backlash?
I don't know,
I hear
actually.
it's not a very good game. Like, it's ambitious, but like it doesn't really deliver on everything.
And it's all cards,
card-based,
right?
So that's really not up my alley. But
Yeah. It'll be in Duels of the Planeswalkers 2013.
oh well, in that case.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoy Metal Gear as a series. I think I liked most of the ending to MGS4, and I think that's a big compliment to the series as a whole. I really enjoyed Microwave Tunnel. I loved the final fist fight, and I loved the final cutscene pre-credits. Post-credits, that blew. That just sucked.
Yeah.
Back to zero. No, just shut up. That did not happen.
So I guess I should place a spoiler warning here, but were you disappointed by... Did you feel it was sort of a cop-out that Snake lived?
Yes.
When kind of everything you
I thought
saw
it was
in the
so
game...
much more thematically appropriate if that's the end, and he just blows his brains out.
Yeah, that felt like it was the whole premise they were building off of, with what had happened to Snake in the first place. You just kind of expected that to happen, and it just kind of felt like they pussied out of it a
And
little
I
bit.
really, really wanted to see that first, early development ending where Snake and Otacon get hung as terrorists. They just get executed.
Oh, I hadn't heard about that.
It was scrapped really early in development. Konami's like, no, what the fuck? No, you cannot. No, you cannot do that.
Don't kill my characters.
But if you listen to the lyrics of the credits song, that's what it's about. It's about Snake and Otacon being executed as traitorous terrorists after all they did.
It's not canon.
Oh, but I wish it was.
So yeah, those are our, I guess, 360 overall bird's view thoughts on Metal Gear Solid. There's obviously a lot more to talk about with each game individually, but
maybe
that's probably...
for another day. I mean, Slow Beef has plenty of his own thoughts. Don't want to exhaust your MGS experience.
I mean, we did leave out Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2.
Which we LP'd, Chip and I, as bonus content in MGS3 because they were included on Subsistence, the Subsistence edition.
Yeah, and again, you can see that LP on either chipandironicus.org, or is it .org
Ours
or
at
.gov?
chipironicus.com, lparchive.org, either way.
Okay, so you were not able to capture a .gov URL.
Well, once we conquer the world of Let's Play, we will be an officially recognized government entity.
Yeah, once you make LP its own independent
Yeah.
state, then you'll do the .gov address. Excellent.
So I guess we had one more thing on the blotter. One more thing we have in common, the two of us.
Yeah, we both are Doctor Who fans.
I think I'm a bigger one. I mean, I don't...
Oh, yeah.
That's not bragging. That's self-deprecating.
Well, you're a big of a fan, as in you've seen, from 60s Doctor Who to present, whereas I got into it more at, what people expect would be the starting point for a more, newbie viewer would be the 2005 and on.
Of the original series. I've seen a majority of every individual Doctor's tenure and all of a few of them.
Yeah. Whereas I began watching Doctor Who, I want to say about a year ago, maybe. I don't remember exactly what got me to watch it. I think it was a combination of seeing people like you and Irregular Hunter, who's a British fellow we have a friend we have in common.
He's a cool guy.
Who, very cool guy. He's a really good artist.
He doesn't.
Has done some amazing
he
fan art.
hangs out in LP, but he doesn't make them, does he?
I don't
So
think
we
he's
can't
ever
really
made
hype
no.
them. If he did, we would.
Yeah, he's contributed a lot of fan art to Freelance Astronauts threads back when they were a thing on SA. You would probably remember them if you saw them. I think they've actually, again, lparchive.org, I think they've saved some of his fan
so
art.
did Wolfshirt. Both of them made a lot of stuff for them.
Yeah, so I think it was a combination of that. Probably some other friends of mine who said, hey, you need to get into Doctor Who.
a great show.
It's this thing. Yeah, and so I started watching the 2005, the new series that started in 2005.
You got into it just
about
in
a
the
year
last
ago.
couple of years, but you started at the beginning of like the relaunch and caught up. Okay.
Exactly, yeah. I started with the very first Christopher Eccleston episode,
The Crystal Mazes episode.
the Crystal Meth episode, and
I
I've
fought
caught
Crystal
up.
Man and won the episode buster.
Yeah, you use the gyro attack to fight Doctor Who, and then you get. So yeah, I'm all caught up to season, I believe, or series, I should say, British terminology. Series 6,
But you're
I think, is the most recent one.
You're current. You've seen the latest Christmas special with the living forest thing. So yeah,
Yes,
you're
I have.
completely current as far as that goes. Cool.
Yeah, the Narnia-inspired
Yeah,
Christmas episode.
that was bogus.
Yeah, I wasn't too
That was
fond of
bogus.
that one, but I mean, speaking from the point of view of someone who's only watched the newer series, I think it has some ups and downs.
It does.
But I think the ups are extremely far up.
They're transcendent. I think. I don't know if what did I describe as it before? I think I described Peggle before as like a digital distillation of joy. And I think that in those transcendent moments, in a few episodes of Doctor Who, that's what the show is. That's what it achieves, and that's why I come back to it. I think it's probably the clearest show to display what I consider the human spirit.
Yeah, not just the human spirit, but I would say it's a show that, more than I've seen in like any other shows, really shows how much the human imagination can just soar.
Yeah, shit is bonkers. And those are my favorite episodes.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember Gridlock? There's one with cat people in a flying
yeah.
love it.
That's one of my top episodes. Fantastic episode.
Oh god, it's great. It's so good. And and
Yeah.
it makes no literal sense, but it just feels so right, And then like that moment at the end where like he sits on the chair backwards and he tells Martha, "I lied because it made it easier to lie," and comes true about all his tragic, weepy backstory that got really pounded into the ground a few years later, but at the time it was great. But I got into it, actually. I had heard of it like as this weird cultural artifact from long ago, and I stumbled across it just flipping through the channels on Sci-Fi Channel.
So you're actually not 70 years old and have
No,
watched the
no,
show since it aired.
I'm just
Okay.
like sitting in my room in high school channel surfing, and I see this really gorgeously composed shot of a dude looking at a bloated red giant star, and I sit down and I watch it, and then like commercial break comes up and they mention this is Doctor Who, and I'm like, I've heard of this, but I can't remember where. I should watch this. And this is a Christopher Eccleston episode. What's it called? It's called The End of the World. That was my first episode. It's about
Is that the second
yeah,
episode?
this is the second
of series
episode
one?
of 2005.
Yeah.
And I found this random rerun of it. They were like mostly through showing the series, and I caught the second episode anyway. And that's it's sort of like a prequel to Gridlock that we just mentioned. So one more reason I love Gridlock is because it's a sequel to my first episode, my first experience that I judge everything else by. Like I think that's what happens in Doctor Who. Like your first episode, your first like production team, and your first Doctor sort of defines your experience through everything else as you move through the show.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, because I watched in order, because I had the luxury of
Right.
Netflix streaming, which Doctor Who thankfully is on, so
Yeah.
I first saw the pilot, which I was kind of like, well, it seems okay, but, the pilot's it's clearly a
Pilot's
pilot.
shaky. Pilot was written by,
Yeah.
well, like everything was written by people who had never written adventure television before, and therefore never really
Right.
written for the budget of adventure television or the pacing,
Right.
or all these things. They'd done dramas and comedies, but like you're fighting monsters and tripping the light fantastic. It requires a different sort of writing, and they really nailed it later. But those aspects are kind of shaky in the first year. They just are. There's no denying it.
Yeah. For me, it did just enough to make me interested in where this guy came, because I had literally no Doctor Who
Right.
backstory at all in my head, so I didn't know where this guy came from. I had no idea about the whole Time Lord thing or the big war with the Daleks and whatnot.
And that's entirely new to the new series, actually. I think the Time War, in any case, and being the last of its kind.
Oh, okay.
So you started where that was introduced. So
okay, that's good to know then.
Uh,
Because, yeah, there was a pretty huge gap when the last episode of whatever the old series was and then when the reboot happened. Or not the reboot, but I guess the continuation
The last
happened.
regular episode was part 4 of Survival, because back then they were all half-hour serials. They're an average of 4 episodes per story, anywhere from 2 to 13, actually, but they averaged at 4. And that was in 1989. And then they had a TV movie in 1996, and that was supposed to be like a backdoor pilot for a co-US-UK production, and it starred a guy named Paul McGann, who is probably better known for Whitnail and I, which is a pretty great movie about people drinking their faces off. There's a Whitnail and I drinking game where you drink what they drink when they drink, and it will kill you. It has killed people, I'm pretty sure. Especially the part where they drink lighter fluid. But yeah, that one wasn't very well received, the TV movie.
Lots of deaths caused by...
It starred Julia Roberts' brother as the Master, who was also rebooted in the new series in 2007. But it was kind of a mess, even though Mr. McGann was great. So, needless to say, that did not spawn a new series. But instead, just this guy, Russell T Davies, he was a big shot TV writer in the UK for doing Queer as Folk, which just huge TV show. It went gangbusters. It won like every award. Everybody was watching it, talking about it. So he's like, okay, I want to make Doctor Who. Like, this was my favorite show as a kid. I want to make it. And I've got all these friends. It was their favorite show as a kid. And like, we all got into television writing because of Doctor Who. Let us make Doctor Who. And so they did. And it's now kind of the biggest show in the UK again. Like, you take out reality shows, soap operas, and sports, and it's like the biggest thing on TV.
And it's good.
Check it out. Again, what I'd recommend is hang out in the, for those of you listening at home who are interested, and you happen to be forum posters, there's a Doctor Who thread in TV Ivy, always active. They're not as welcoming as the Trad Games guys, to be quite frank. They aren't nearly as friendly. But
well, they're so wrapped up in the Doctor Who canon that, anyone...
I just saw this episode and I want...
it's like, that's kind of natural, I would say, when you're so engrossed in something.
They're really wrapped up in their own opinions, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's that too.
So it's not a canon thing. Those people get rightly laughed at because it's a fairy tale with aliens. It's not science fiction. Like,
yeah.
And I love it for that, but, full disclosure, it's not science fiction.
The great thing about Doctor Who, I think, is just how easy it is that you can get someone who's never heard of the show involved, and you don't have to select, just the first episode of the new series, or
even the first episode of a
series
given series.
Oh yeah, or of a given series even, because a lot of people say that if you want to get into the series and see a solid standalone episode, you want to watch Blink.
Yeah,
and I would agree with that. You not so
well,
much?
If you're trying to get someone into it, Blink is really not...
It may not be representative,
really
but it's really good at the same time.
I just have a problem with Blink being overhyped personally, because I've gotten really tired of the writer just recycling his own elements. And a lot of that you see in Blink. It's a lot of the same non-linear storytelling, which is cool once or twice. Not every time. And, it's not Blink's fault. I shouldn't blame it for everything that came after, but I can't help it. I'm human.
Yeah, I watched an episode with somebody who had left off at a certain point, and then another person who had never seen an episode, and this was the Matt Smith series, Series 5, I forget the episode name. Maybe
Series
you can
5
enlighten
is
me.
pretty darn good.
Series 5 is really good. It was the one with the quote unquote vampires
of
in
Venice.
Old Italy.
So
Vampires
we
of
were
Venice. Thank
practically there.
you. Yeah.
I love the way that one opens in the bachelor party. Oh my god. There's a diabetic joke in there just for you.
Yeah, that's probably what got me hooked for real. And but yeah, the person who had never seen the series before, after the episode was over, she said, I'm kind of interested to see more of this.
It gets really silly at the end. I think there's a better episode in there than there was, because it's got some weird tonal shifts, but on the whole, it's a solid episode.
Yeah, definitely. So, there's a lot of places you can start if, you're like me and want to get into the new series.
Generally, like, what people who really watch it and understand it will tell you is, if you want to get into it, watch the next episode that comes out. Like,
Sure.
like we've
Why
all
not?
got lists of our personal favorites, but like, hey, just jump in right the fuck now. That's hard right now because it's not coming back until the fall, like September, October.
Yeah, or if you've got, instant Netflix and you don't want to be burned with too many episodes to watch, you can start with when the most recent Doctor first appeared, which is the start of Series 5. That's a good point to start,
starting
too,
point because it's a new lead actor. They do a sort of soft reset in, like, the whole... If you care about continuity, they do a pretty cool series-long arc that, in part, exists to just sweep up continuity loose ends from the last production team. Which is, a handy backdoor way to do it, sort of like the Time War in the 2005 series. Like, oh, why doesn't this work the same way at Time War? Fuck it, Cracks did it. The same sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, personally, like I was saying about the reusing of elements, I'm finding that to be really irritating. Which is why every year my favorite episodes and the ones I look forward to most are by people that never wrote Doctor Who before. Like this past year, God Complex, the one with the Minotaur.
I'm drawing a blank on that one.
It's the creepy hotel that's got rooms full of everyone's fears.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that one was
I
interesting.
thought that was fantastic. I think it was my favorite of the year. First time Doctor Who writer.
It's weird. I kind of forgot about the whole Minotaur thing, but I kind of think of that one more as the kind of creepy motel or hotel.
And then the one right after it, called The Girl Who Waited, it had sort of a portal aesthetic, and it had two Amy's.
Oh yeah, that one was really
great. I think
great.
that was a first
really
or second time Doctor Who writer, and those are always my favorite episodes, because I love... What I love about the show is innovation and experimentation and fresh perspectives.
Yeah, and the whole canon of Doctor Who allows the writers to do just that. You're not confined to, one specific
It's like Dungeons
set
and
of
Dragons.
rules necessarily. Oh, hey, we're circling back a little bit. Nice.
And one thing I liked about the last regime, like even Russell T Davies, the guy I mentioned that used his clout to relaunch the series, he wrote a little under half the episodes, and he rewrote, he had heavy edits on like all the others up until he left the show. And he had the ability, in my opinion, to still keep that fresh innovation going. And by the end of his time, he wrote some real shit. Like, he did. But he had flashes of that early innovation even in Season 4, his last full year. Do you remember Turn Left? The one that was just Donna and Vernon.
Oh, yeah.
I love that one so much. And the same with Midnight.
Yeah.
Which is the flip side, a lot of Doctor, practically no Donna. I love both of those.
Yeah, I remember being kind of iffy on a lot of Season 4.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of had alternating levels of enjoyment for the series. Like, Series 1, I really loved. Series 2, I was a little more down on. Series 3 with Martha, I was really consistently good.
I don't know
Series
about consistently
4
good. I think you're forgetting Daleks in Manhattan.
Daleks in Manhattan. Yeah, that may be it, because I'm remembering like the really, really good episodes, like there's Blank and Gridlock.
Yeah, seriously,
and all
the
that.
second half of Season 3 is probably the best the show's ever been. I'd say the second half of Season 1, too. It's got Father's Day in there, the one where, what's her name,
Father's Day was really
Rose saves
good,
her dead dad's life because, he got run over by a car when she was an infant, and then through time travel, she fucks that up, and it fucks up a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and she has to come to terms with that. It blends a lot of sci-fi stuff with genuine emotional issues.
Another one that's great for that, written by the
is
same
really great.
writer, is Human Nature, Family of Blood, two-parter in Season 3 with Martha. That's my favorite, my absolute favorite.
I need to go back and watch all these.
So, any other thoughts on that? Or
Kind of covered the entry-level
Yeah.
thing. I think a lot of people who listen to this probably have at least heard
if you've
of,
got
if not watched
questions,
Doctor
you know,
Who already.
hey,
But
comment, tweet at us, form spring us, maybe I'll guest again.
yeah, you can again leave your plugs for people how to get a hold of you.
I will say, I've had like 10 people Steam friend me just today. And one of them
In the few hours
and one of
since
them
this is
gifted me Portal, thanks to you, person.
Aw. You
and,
owe
and I
me.
bought myself Dungeon Defenders because it was on sale for like $5 today. So,
Yeah, that was good
so
timing.
that's,
I noticed
that's
that
two
today.
things from my my wish list that we talked about last time. This is a double-length
Well,
episode.
It is. Wow, we're at like an hour 40.
3.5 is more like 4.5. 3.75.
3-point infinity.
3.75, which reminds me we didn't talk about Pathfinder, so screw you.
We'll get to that on 3.5, the
Yeah.
sequel.
So,
Sounds right.
hey, I guess we're going to have that ending theme play us out. Everybody enjoy your nights, afternoons.
Have a good one, people. Yay.